lot of things over here. Maasros, um, based olive.
Yes.
If one was passing through the street and said, "Take yourselves some figs," they may eat and are exempt. Therefore, if they brought them into their houses, they tie them as the definite. Pick and bring them into your house. They may not eat of them a chance meal, and therefore, if they took them into their houses, they tithe only as demai.
So did you have why this is? Because you got an Amaretz walking around. If he tells everyone, eat now, then he knows that they haven't been mastered, because otherwise he'd be saying, take them home.
Right,
All right. So
right,
then,
right.
okay. So then you can snack them. But once he tells you they've been mastered, then immediately you know that yeah, he was Kovea them for Chumas and Masters, and also we don't trust him.
Right.
So interesting that
And God,
normally
right.
we'd have a thing like a Pesha Asa or a Pesha Hitir, but this is a case where it's not exactly the same thing. The Pesha Asa or Pesha Hitir is where the same mouth that told you that the woman was kidnapped also told you that she wasn't that
Wow,
she
right,
wasn't touched. Okay.
right.
There it's kind of the same. It's the same level of believability. Whereas in this case, he knows enough to know that the fruit needs to be mastered, but he just doesn't know how to master it properly.
So right, okay. So how did so we don't believe him. So what does he think when
So
we
we
say,
believe him enough to say that you can't eat a snack out of it because it's now kavua for master already. Um, but but we don't believe him that he was able to fix it. So even though he says no, you can eat it now because I've taken chumas and maastros, because he's an Amaretz, the rule of Amaretz applies.
okay. Mhm. They were sitting in a doorway or a shop, and he said, "Take yourself some figs. They may eat and are exempt." And the owners of the doorway and the shop are liable. Rabbi Yehuda exempts unless he turns away his face and changes the place where he was sitting. If one carries up produce from Galil to Judea or ascends to Jerusalem, he may eat of it until he reaches his destination, and so too on his return. Remeah says, until he reaches the place where he will spend the Sabbath. Peddlers are that who go around from town to town may eat until they reach the place where they intend to spend the night. And Yehuda says the first house is his house. Okay.
All right. Now, Mr. Dalit, Peros shitiraman ad shelo nigra malachtan. So he jumped the gun and he took truma before it was technically liable for truma. Okay. Now, does that affect the status of the produce? Do you now say that okay, so now you took truma, that's koveya now, and now it also needs maser and trumas maser taken off it as well? Or do you say, well, it didn't affect the status of the fruit, you can still snack off it? Rabbi Eliezer oser milechol mehem ara. He says, no, once you've taken truma, that's it. You've effectively made a gemar malacha on it, and now you can't snack from it. V'chachamim materin. I say, no, didn't affect anything. It's still truma, but you can carry on snacking on it until you finish the malacha. Chutz mi kalkalas teinim, except for the basket of figs. What's the situation of the basket of figs? The Mishnah will tell us right away. Kalkalas teinim shitrama. If you took truma off a basket of figs. Now, if you recall, we just learned that what's the Gemar Malacha for figs? It's we said that for figs, it's when you fill the basket, when you're ready to take it
Right.
to the shuk. Okay. So as soon as he takes truma, he is a chachamim. He's broadcasting his intention that he's now done with that basket. And now we say, okay, so that's Koveya. Now we're done. So Rabbi Shimon says no, that doesn't finish it because unless he actually does have a Gemar Malacha,
Well,
yeah, he's finished with it. But Chachamim Austrian and they say no, taking truma, the act of taking truma itself shows your das that you finished collecting on this basket. Yeah. Mishnah Hey Omer Lechavero. Guy says to his friend, Helach Isar Zeva Tainli Bo Chamesh Tainim. Okay, so now what we're doing over here is we're making a transaction. Um,
mhm.
Now that's another thing that causes a Gemara Malacha is when you actually have a transaction when a commercial when there's a when you say, okay, I have purchased these fruit from you, that
Right,
immediately is Koveya for Trumas and Maasros. So the question is going to be on how is the Kinyan made and when is the Kinyan made?
right.
How does it come into his possession? So he tells his friend, go take this money. Yes, sorry, it doesn't matter what coin it is. It's just a random amount and says, yeah, take a shekel and go and uh, buy 5 figs for me. Lo yochal ad she divrei Rabbi Meir. So Rabbi Meir says that is a full transaction, and therefore you have to take Maasros. Rabbi Yehuda Omer ochel achas achas pater. He says he's allowed to take them one by one. The im serif, but if he picked up two at a time, now that's a kinyan. So when he makes a kinyan, is when he picks up the fig. If he's picking them up one by one, that's still considered casual. But as soon as he picks up two in one hand or two together, um,
Okay.
this is now he's done a kinyan, and this is and he has to take Maasros. Amar Rabbi Yehuda Maaseh Beginas Radim. He says, furthermore, I have a case that we have a practical case that we have in our on record where there was a rose garden. Mas Beginas Radim Shehaisa Yerushalayim in Jerusalem Shehayu Teinim, and there was a fig tree inside the rose garden. Now the owner of the fig tree didn't want people walking through his rose garden to pick figs because he was afraid people would damage the roses.
No.
So what did he do? He went and he put up a duchen at the entrance to the rose garden and said, "You want to buy figs? Pay me here. I'll go and get you the figs." Okay, so you put up a v'hayu teinim nimkaros mishalosh u'me'arba v'isar. So he's selling here, buy figs, and the people are buying, okay, 3 or 4 figs for an isar. V'lohu fresh mimena truma maser me'alam, and lamase, people didn't take trumas and masras because they were doing it one by one, and that was the instruction, and that was okay. Mishna Vav, Omer lechavero. Yeah, and he says to his friend, "Hey, lach isar zeh be'eser teinim she'avor li." Yeah, he says his friend owns the fig orchard,
Right.
and he says this Issa over here, I'm going to walk into a field and I'm going to choose myself 10 figs. Borer v'ochel. He can choose them and eat like he can walk into the garden and pick one and eat it, and pick another one and eat it, and that is okay. The eshkol she'avorli. If we're talking about a vineyard, so he says the same thing to his vineyard. This is because this money over here is for a cluster of grapes I'm going to pick in your vineyard. Megarger v'ochel. He can pluck the individual grapes and eat them. Pluck, eat,
Mhm.
and he doesn't have to take trumas and masras. Berimon she'avorli. If he's talking about a rimon, then the fruit is considered each individual seed. So he's got to go into the tree and break open the fruit and start plucking the fruit out while it's on the tree. Because if he takes the whole thing, then he's made a kinyan on multiple fruits, and now it's already covered off for trumas and masras because he did a kinyan. Porek for ochel. Okay. He has to break it open and eat the individual seeds. But avatiach shavorli, what if it's a melon? Right? Again, each slice is considered like a whole thing. It's basically what's like a mouthful kind of that seems
Uh,
to be the thing because the fruit itself seems to be that's one fruit, but it looks like what the Mishnah is telling us is that it's like what basically one bite is considered arai, and if he takes a whole melon, that's a big thing, and he's now made a
all right.
kinyan, and it needs to, okay, sofes v'ochel. So he's allowed to slice and eat, slice and eat. Okay. Aval imar marlo be'esrim teinim elu. If he says, look, you see this branch over here? There are 20 figs on here. Here's the money for these 20 figs. Okay. B'shnei eshkolos elu. Or he says, for these 2 clusters of grapes over here on the vine, this is the money for these 2 clusters. B'shnei rimonim elu. Or same thing for pomegranates. B'shnei avatichim elu. He specifies the ones that he wants and he hands over the money. Okay. Now, what's happened over here is that he has paid and it's mechuber lekarka. So as soon as he pays the money, it's his.
Mhm.
Okay,
Right.
he doesn't have to. That's now his property. He's made and they've made a kinyan on that specific fruit, and it's already his, and it's attached to the ground. If
Right.
you're making it on something that's attached to the ground, it's not liable to Trumas and Maasros. It's as if it's his own vineyard, right? Remember,
Right.
it's not liable to Trumas and Maasros while it's still attached to the ground. So now, Ochel kedarko pater. Now he can go and pluck them himself. Mipnei shekana b'mechuber lekarka. He already purchased them while they were attached to the ground, and therefore the chiyuv for Trumas and Maasros is not chal on them in the same way as if it were his own vineyard.
But once he picks them off, he takes
No, but
those
that's, but
those.
that's but then you look at it. It's like the guy walking through his own vineyard and plucks a bunch of grapes and starts eating them inside the field, and that's okay.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Okay. We're gonna go back here. You want to do the Truma first before we go back to the beginning? Wait, I guess Truma's first before we go back to the very beginning.
Yeah,
Okay.
Trumas.
Truma's Yud Aleph, Yud Aleph, Yud Aleph. No, yeah. All that are pickled together are permitted except with leeks. Leeks of chulin and leeks of truma, vegetables of chulin and leeks of truma are forbidden, but leeks of chulin with vegetables of truma are permitted. And Rosia says anything that is stewed with beet is forbidden since it imparts a flavor. Reb Shimon says cabbage from irrigated soil with cabbage from a rain-watered soil is forbidden because it absorbs. Reb Yehuda says all things cooked together are permitted except with meat. Reb Yochanan ben Nori says liver renders forbidden, but is not renders forbidden because it exudes but does not absorb. And if an egg is cooked with forbidden spices, even yolk is forbidden because it absorbs. Liquid in which truma has been stewed or pickled is forbidden as to non-priests.
Okay, done.
And now we go to
Tobias.
truma olive. All right, because this is the next. We have only going to do two in 3 years. So
Yeah.
okay, okay. Good olive. If one repays his death in the seventh year, he must say to him, I remit it. And if he said to him, even so, he may accept it from him, since it is written, and this is the word of the release. Similarly, if a murderer went into exile to a city or refuge, and the people of the city wanted to render honor to him, he must say to them, I am a murderer. If they said, even so, he may accept, since it is written, and this is the word of the slayer. Whoever repays a debt in the seventh year, the sages are well pleased with him. Whoever borrows from a proselyte whose sons converted with him need not pay the debt to his sons, but if he repays it, the sages are well pleased with him. All movable property is acquired by drawing it, and whoever keeps his word can come and are well pleased with him.
Adjonallah, Tobias.
Okay.
Trumos.
First one. Five may not separate truma, and if they separated the truma, it is not truma. The deaf, mute, the imbecile, the minor, and he who separates from what is not his. If a non-Jew separated from what belongs to a Jew, even with permission, his truma is not truma. Okay. What are we doing at Shavias? We're doing it to Shavias. So send them on a new one.
Truma.
Just truma. Okay. All right. Okay. And we are in Paya. Paya. Okay. Gimel. If a person plucks moist onions from the marketplace and he reserves dry ones for storage time, he gives payah for those separately, and for these separately, and similarly in the case of beans, and similarly in the case of a vineyard. The person who thins gives from what is left for him what is left, and the person who plucks from one place gives what remains for everything. Seed onions are liable to payah, but Reb Yossi exempts the rectangles of onions between vegetables. Reb Yossi says payah from each one, but the Chachamim say one for all. Brothers who divided two payot, if they become partners again, they give one payah. If they two purchase a tree, they give payah. They give one payah. If they purchase north and one south, this gives payah separately, and this one gives payah separately. If a person sells, if a person steams, this is stems. If a person sells stems of trees in his field, he gives payah from each one. Rabbi Yehuda said, when the owner of the field did not leave, but if the owner of the field left, he gives payah for all. Okay. And also Olios. Okay. Someone who stands in the courtyard of a catacomb is tahor as long as it is 4 cubits, according to Beit Shammai's opinion. Beis Hillel says 4 handbreadths. If a beam was used to cover for a grave, whether it is standing upright or lying on its side, nothing becomes tummy except what is opposite the opening of the grave. If one end of the beam was made into a goyal for a grave, only 4 handbreadths of the beam become tummy, provided that the rest is going to be chopped off. And Yehuda says it is all regarded as one unit. Someone who touches a tightly sealed barrel full of tar or liquid that was made into a cover for a grave becomes tummy for 7 days. Moreover, the barrel and the wicked remain tahor. Someone who touches an animal used as a cover for a grave becomes tummy for 7 days. If Maya says a living being does not transmit tuma as a cover. If someone touches a corpse and utensils or I'm sorry. If someone touches a corpse and utensils or forms a roof over a corpse and touches utensils, the utensils become tame. If he forms a roof over a corpse and over utensils, or he touches a corpse and forms a roof over utensils, the utensils remain tahor. If his hand is a handbreadth square, the utensils are tame. These are two houses. There are two houses, each of which contains a piece of corpse flesh, half the size of an olive, and a person stretches his hands into the houses. If his hands are as big as a square handbreadth, tuma spreads. If not, tuma does not spread.
Okay.
Okay. What is it? Oh. If If one hires a worker to assist him with Messick wine, his wage is prohibited. But if he hired him to assist him with different work, even though he said to him, "Move a barrel of Messick wine for me from one place to place," his wage is permitted. If one hired a donkey to transport Messick wine on it, the rental fee is prohibited. If he hired it to sit upon, even though the idolater placed his flag on upon it, his rental fee is permitted. If Messick wine fell into grapes, he should rinse them off and they are permitted. But if they were cracked, they are prohibited. If it fell into dates or onto figs, there is enough in them to give taste. It is prohibited. There was an incident in which Boethius, the son of Zonon, brought dried figs by boat, and a barrel of Messick wine broke, and the wine fell onto them. And he asked the sages, and they permitted it. This is the rule. Anything that contributes to his enjoyment by the flavor it imparts is prohibited, and anything that does not contribute to his enjoyment by the flavor it imparts is permitted, such as vinegar which fell into chopped beans. An idolater was helping a Jew to transport casks of wine from place to place. If there was a state of supervision, it is permitted. If he informed them that this was going far, it is prohibited. If they said if there was time for him to puncture, patch, or allow to dry, Reb Shimon ben Gamil says only if there was time for him to open, apply a new seal, and allow it to dry. Okay. And Yevamos. The commandment is for the elders to perform biyubam. If he was unwilling to do so, we approach all the other brothers. If they were unwilling, or we return to the elders and say to him, the mitzvah is incumbent upon you, perform either chalitza or yibum. If he deferred to a minor until he becomes of age, or to the elders until he arrives from overseas, or to a deaf mute, or to an idiot, we do not listen to him, and we say to him, the mitzvah is incumbent upon you, perform either chalitza or yibum. One who performs chalitza with his yavama remains equal to the other brothers with respect to the inheritance. If there is a father, the estate belongs to the father. One who marries his yavama gains ownership of his brother's estate. Rabbi Yehuda says in any case, if there is a father, the estate belongs to the father. One who performs chalitza with a yavama is forbidden to marry her relatives and forbidden to marry his. He is forbidden to her mother, mother's mother, father's mother, daughter, daughter's mother, son's daughter, and to her sister during her lifetime. The brothers, however, are permitted. She is forbidden to his father, and father's father, father's son, a son's son, brother, and a brother's son. A man is permitted to marry the relative of Kalutza's co-wife, but it's forbidden to marry the co-wife of his Kalutza's relative. Right.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
Could be a very interesting Shabbos.